I'm Barry Godin and welcome back to BG Tips. And today we're going to be packing some bags. Hope you've been following along this series. So we're going to be reverting back to the kit list and you've got to print one out. And if you print one out, when we do the kit list, we tick things off and cross them off as they go into bags, and then we put them into the bags in the bike. Doing this series, I've emptied out everything I've ever owned into piles and piles and piles. So to try and work out what I actually need to take with me, it's going to take me a little bit of time. So bear with me, we'll keep running off and getting different bits. And hopefully we can kind of pack enough that eventually at the end of this, and hopefully next week, I'm going to be going on an adventure. So I'm going to start off with an easy one. We're going to be talking about the frame bag. So this is the frame bag I use. It's one custom made for my Genesis. Things you put in here will vary depending on how tall you are or how big your frame is. So first of all, the first bit I ever put in there, my tent poles. And there's one thing happened last week. It's nowhere near my birthday. My birthday is the end of August. But my girlfriend treated me to a new tent. Because I'm doing all this and she got really inspired by everything I'm up to. She thought, you know what, you deserve a new tent. So it's a bit outrageous and a bit ridiculous, but now I have the MSR Carbon Reflex 1. This thing is insane. It's probably not one to be recommended because of the cost of it. This is far better value for money. But this thing, that weighs 1.2 or 1.4 kilograms. That weighs 600 grams, and that's with the poles and the tent pegs, which is mind-blowing. I've been trying to squeeze a bivvy bag into a lot of these trips because it's lighter and smaller, but I tell you what, this packs down smaller and is lighter than my bivvy bag on its own with the poles and the pegs. So it's pretty mind-blowing. I was going to do an unboxing video with you guys, but I was so desperate to open it and try have a look at it that I didn't let you. So this will be used on my next trip, which hopefully again is next week, and it's freshly unpacked. I need to come up with a new bag system. This one's been great the way it works out, because what I do is I store, rather than trying to fit that in my bike, which is massive, try and separate things up a little bit to make it easier to pack. So I'm going to use these to pack, but I just want to show you the other ones. They are my tent poles and my pegs. I keep the poles and the pegs together in the same bag, so you know you're not going to lose them. The pegs are in a different bag in there because they get a bit dirty, a bit mucky, which does mean when it comes to putting your tent away, you can get it a lot smaller. And everything about packing is about trying to make it as small as space as possible, so you can wedge more bits in. So that is how small that ends up packing up. So that's quite impressive from where it was. And they're the poles which I then put in my frame bag. So I'm going to quickly show you this because it's mind-blowing. As I pull this out, which I need to come up with a new bag because that is a bit skinny and a bit long and thin. I'd probably like something half the size but a little bit wider. So I'm going to try and come up with something for that for the actual fabric-y parts of the tent. But these are the tent poles. And the biggest thing that I spotted was how much shorter they are. So it does bring into account, if you have a small frame bag or a small size frame, maybe look at what tents there is out there, go to some shops, pull the poles out and see if you can actually find what's going to measure up and fit inside your frame bag. So that's the reason why I wanted to particularly show you these, because that will make it a lot easier and give me loads more space, you can tell, already in my frame bag. So it's not just weight, it's size, and that is mind-blowing. So, full review coming soon in the world. So let's get back to packing. And in my head, I do use the kit list to tick it off, and so at the end I know what I've got left to pack or what I might have forgotten. But generally I kind of know in my head what goes in each bag. So if I kind of pack each bag individually, and then I kind of know, oh, I've got most of the stuff in there, now I'll tick off the list and just kind of reminder, oh, I forgot that bit to wedge in there. But I've done it so many times now, I've got a set order of what goes where. It's going to change for you, but here's what I do and how I pack. So, tent poles go in there. If they don't fit in your frame bag, sometimes you can actually put them inside that, you know, the front bag goes in that harness we're talking about on the front of the bike here. You can actually put them in there and kind of pull them in nice and tight so they don't go flying around. But I do find if you crash, you might damage your tent poles, which is not great. So that goes in there, and it goes at the most long space at the bottom. And then I put my toolkit, which ends up going in kind of a sandwich bag, just so it doesn't get wet. It will get a little bit damp, but kind of a sandwich bag is going to keep it a bit more protected. That's that little bag of excitement you all saw on another video. That just kind of wedges in the bottom. And again, that's a fair amount of weight. And I know all of you are weight weenies, so let's have a little scary way of some of my products. So that is coming in at 440 grams. I've never done this in my life before, weigh things, but I think I might scare myself and end up taking stuff out of there because I realise it's almost the weight of my whole tent. But yes, that's my nuts and bolts and all my spares. That's what goes in next. Then at the bottom put my little bottle of tubeless solution. So that's all my tools and spares in the bottom. I hope you don't need to get to them that quickly, but if I do, I can just whiz in there and get them. And then that's the major bits in there. Next, I'm going to put in 2 packets of food. So that's 2 dinners. And why do I do that? It's so it creates a bit of a cradle. Someone's asked me a great question of how do you stop your frame bag splurging out. Genuinely, I do it because that kind of sorts out the side and creates a bit of a layer. So when I go to put the water bladder in next, it's going to kind of fill that space and keep it all contained. The other bit that also happens is the way you create your frame bag size. If you have a really baggy bag, it's going to bellow out. But if it's made to fit and it's nice and tight inside your frame, that's going to keep it nice and thin. You do find it does bag out a little bit, but you just kind of bash it around, it sorts itself and kind of settles down. So I do find as soon as I start a trip, it does need settling down a lot of the packing, but after a few days, it all goes in nice and neatly and smoothly. So in here, we've now got 2 dinners, tent poles, we've got the tools and spares. Next is going to go in there the water. So this is, I filled this up for you guys, this is 2 litres of water, which is quite a lot. I don't generally carry 1.5 litres or 2. Top tip, suck the air out. Ugh, that's some old water in there, that's disgusting. If I keel over in this video, that was not a sensible idea. Clean your water bladder, everyone. Clean your water bladder. So now we have 2 litres of water in here. That then slots in. It's easier when it's on the bike, maybe. Then my hose has to go for the little hole, which I said about before. I've got a little Velcro hole at the top. Make sure that's stuck in through there. Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Give it a twirl. Make sure your tube is not kinked up inside the bag because you'll be sucking for dear life and nothing's ever going to come out. And that generally does fit in there quite nice and neatly. And what more can I get in here? Well, next then goes my pump. That's quite big again, but obviously needs to be get hold of, and it's kind of difficult, long things to get in anywhere else in the bike. So that goes in there. Give it a wiggle, give it a shuffle. And then next up is then going to be my tripod, because I have to get to all the time. And again, it's quite a long, thin object that kind of shove in there as well. That's my tripod. It's one we spoke about before. This is that Photo Pro one, which I haven't tried out yet. So that's on the next trip. Shuffle that in there. And then when it's on the bike, give it a shake. I generally do pack this bag when it's on the bike, but I thought I'd show you guys how. So that then closes up like that. And there's a little bit of spare space at the top, which is the reason why I say always get a custom-made frame bag, because in here I'm going to be adding my filter, and that will just sneak in the top, which is quite nice. And if I'm just going for 3 days, I won't use every bag on this bike, and I probably won't use that front roo pouch. I'll be using the main front bag, the rear pack, the frame bag and the accessories bag and the stem cells. I won't be carrying the fork bags. So these can also slot in here as well at a sneak. So get my 2 water bottles in there. So now that's capacity of 4 litres of water, and there's 3 litres in the bladder. We're doing well. Make sure this does up again. Ta-da! So we're all packed. And let's start ticking some things off the list. So in here, we have my tools and spares. I have my pump. I have my tripod. I then have my water bladder. I have 2 meals, so that's the start of the meal process. So 3 days away, 2 meals, that's enough food in there. I've got my tent poles. What else have I got in there? I've got my bladder. I've got my 2 foldable water bottles. That's quite a lot in there, and it's a bit bulgy, but I'm saying, once it kind of packs down on the bike, you'll notice that sits there quite nicely and quite thin. Here's a scary one. Now let's weigh it. So with 2 litres of water, we're coming in at 4.5 kilograms. That's not bad for everything that's inside there. But the biggest thing is that's 4.5 kilograms. That's now sitting really nice and low on the bike. So it's going to add all that stability, and that's why I like getting the water in there. You put water in other places, that's a lot of weight. The water its alone is 2 kilograms itself. So that's why I get the weight low. My tools and spares was 0.5 kilo. So all of that is as low as it can go on the bike without being on the ground. So that's the frame bag. Next up, let's talk about the front bag. And for that, I showed you this in the other video. I use a dual-ended dry bag. And the reason why we get dual-ended is so I can balance up the weight from side to side. If you had one which just one bit at the bottom, you just wedge it in and it all comes a bit lopsided on the front. So this keeps you nicely balanced. So first of all, I try and do 2 or 3 rolls depending on how much I need to squeeze in there. So I said 3 rolls to be waterproof, but generally I don't have enough space. So it's 1, 2, and let's try like that and probably do a third. And that means we are waterproof, and let's see if we squeeze it in. First bit I stick in here is going to be my tent. And I'm using the old tent, not the old tent, my MS Hubba tent, just so you guys know what I usually carry and the way it fits. So get that as small as thin as possible. And this is the reason why I love this, is because I can stack vertically. So when that slides in, I push it to the end. It sits vertically inside the dry bag. As you notice, it only takes from there to about where that black tab is. And that's what sneaks that in there. Next up then goes the, what we're going to put next. Let's put some shoes in next. So these are those shoes we're talking about. Again, pack them vertically. So when you are packing, look at where you're going to strap the bag on. If you've got a pair of shoes in the way, which I was about to put there, I'm going to be pulling down against the shoes and it may not make it super tight. You want to have to squeeze the bag. So I'm actually going to slip in the roll mat next. So in the bottom we have the tent, then we have the roll mat, and now we have the shoes. They go in there. It's a bit difficult sitting down. I normally have to stand up and kind of give it a good welly to get it all to fit. Perfect. And then next up is going to be my sleeping bag, which I'm going to transfer from this old dry bag, which is massive. Was exactly the same. It's exactly the same, so why am I bothering? That's 13 litres, that's 12 litres, or whatever. It might be slightly smaller and a jazzier colour. So make sure that's my sleeping bag liner. Let's store that in with the sleeping bag so it's in the right place where it needs to be. Perfect. And don't forget, try and put your sleeping bag in a compression sack. Synthetic or down. Down, just don't compress it forever. Just keep it compressed for the trip, and when you get home, try and let it expand and fluff up a bit. But you want to get this as small as possible, so do really put on those cords. You can buy compression sacks separately. I did look at a fancy light one, which I might purchase at some point, because I realised maybe I'm trying to pack a bit lighter after doing these videos. I think I'm going to be shocked at how heavy, well, I know how heavy my bike is, but how much I could lose some weight on the bike and make it slightly easier for myself. So tuck that in like that, nice and smart. Stick them in his new fancy dry bag. You want to make sure things are in dry bags, not only to keep them dry. If my sleeping bag gets wet, it's a nightmare. That's a real bad thing to happen. But it does make things slippery inside the inside your bags. If they're slippery inside your bags, that means you can slide things past each other. And especially when it comes to packing the rear bag, you'll see how much useful that is. So we're winning. So in here we have the tents at the end. So when I get to the campsite or pitch spot, I can whip open the end and grab my tent out. Next up I then have the sleeping bag. I put it there so when I kind of crunch it down, it's going to get nice and tight. Then I've got the roll mat in between the 2 shoes at the end. So I've got shoe, and the roll mat in the middle, which then at the end hopefully leaves me past this black spot here. I have enough space to put either the evening clothes or my riding clothes. Genuine here would be my riding spare clothes. I don't need them that often, and it means with my down jacket and everything, the back of my bike will then be my evening wear, so nice and comfortable. So let's quickly pack my riding spare clothes and get that in the bike. So let's make this up as we go along. We're going to be trying now packing for a week, so let's say 5-6 days. So that's enough clothing for 5-6 days, and then enough food and stuff like that to go for 5-6 days. So for that, I'll carry 2 spare pairs of Lycra. The other pair of Lycra I'll then be wearing when I start the trip. So Let's put them to the side for one moment. Lycra is the biggest, bulkiest thing to try and pack away. It's a bit of a weird shape. That goes in the bottom. And this is a dry bag, which now has a hole in it, so I won't be using this one. Let's choose another one. So this is a 4 litre dry bag. I find 4 litres is generally quite a good size for clothing, and then everything else I'll try and get into 2 litre bags. But that kind of goes in quite nicely. They're the two Lycra shorts, and you can probably see how much space they take up. So if you are staying in kind of youth hostels or B&Bs, maybe only take one spare set, and then you can just wash them every night because you know you can get them dry and clean. If you're in a tent, it's a bit hard to try and wash them and get them clean. So yeah, that's why I carry a couple of spares. And then you've got some socks. You've got to carry socks, man. You can't have enough of them. So let's say we're going to pack 3 pairs of socks, which means for 2 days I'll be wearing the same pair of socks, or I can try and wash them out, or they're going to get wet from the rain, or they go so solid I can't wear them anymore. So they go in next. That's 3. I kind of have unbundled them so they go a bit flatter. That again is a lot of space. Let's pop that in there. So that's not bad. And then what we got left? We then have a couple of t-shirts. So I'll probably be wearing one as we start the trip, hopefully. And then I'm going to be packing 2, which then allows me, again, it's only 2 days I'm going to have to wear the same t-shirt twice, which we have mentioned it many, many times. Merino wool is wonderful. It's going to let you ride for a few days without stinking like anything. So that then goes in there. So that's the riding clothes, spare riding clothes. And this is for kind of wild in the middle of nowhere, have to carry everything type stuff. You saw what sorry, I should teach you that. So first of all, do one roll and then push it down and let the air come out. And you can kind of vacuum pack them. And do one more roll and then push, get the air out before you fully seal them. And you can almost, you see how much smaller that is now. So it's almost vacuum packed in there, and that's going to slot, hopefully, in the end of this bag. Ta-da! So we're all in. So there's actually quite a lot in this front bag. Again, we need to balance it out with the back. So we want to keep everything kind of similar weights. So for the first time ever, I'm going to weigh my front bag. Moment of truth, we're going to come in at 3.7 kilograms, which is not bad considering there's a tent, there's a sleeping bag, there's a pair of shoes, there's a roll mat. So that's my entire sleeping system, apart from the poles which are in the frame bag. And then all my spare riding clothes. And let's say we're going for 5 days. Let's put a couple of meal packets in there. So that was the cool thing I was saying about these dehydrated meals. You see how thin they are? That means they're going to just slide in and stay well out the way. And there's 1. There's 2. And then pack one the other side, and then kind of creating a sandwich to go in. Not a food sandwich, sadly. Get that in there. So let's see what this now weighs with all those extra meals in there. So we're going to come in at, not bad, 4.4 kilograms, which is quite nice because the frame bag was 4.5 as well. But don't forget, we're packing for 5 days, or 6 days even. We can go for 6 days. We have 2 meals in the frame bag. We have 3 meals inside here. We have all my sleeping as well. Let's start ticking some things off the list, actually, before I forget what I've got. So in this one, to tick off further on, we have the sleeping bag, we have the roll mat, we have the tent, we then have the spare shoes, we then have my spare riding clothes, which you see leaves a few bits left on the list. So rather than making this one epically long, hour-long video, we're going to break up into a couple of parts. So this is the end of part 1. I apologise, all of you in tents, you kind of want to know what happens next, what goes in the rear bag. But you have to wait till next week, and I'll go through that nice and easily and have a bit more time to spend with you guys. That's what we packed up so far. We've got a full frame bag and a full front bag, and that's all sleeping, a bit of food, well, not all the dinners. As there's a lot in there. It's pretty good. Let me know what you would want to put in your frame bag, or what top tips you've got. If you've got a small frame, where do you put your tent poles and various facts like that. Hope you're managing it out there nowadays. And next episode, I'm going to be covering all the other items, such as the seat pack, the accessory bags, those stem cells, and what I put on the forks. But until next time, happy adventuring, thanks for watching, and ciao for now.